So you want to train a large language model on a college textbook. Well, this college textbook is 400 pages long, and that's obviously way larger than our token limits. So how do you do it? Well, there is going to be a workaround on this, and it's going to be called chunking. Here's what the Langchain documentation says. Once you've loaded documents, you often want to transform them to better suit your application. The simplest example is you may want to split a long document into smaller chunks that can fit your model's context window. So I'm going to be showing you guys 6 different ways of splitting your text. We're going to start off with the character, then we're going to go into recursive, token, markdown, HTML, as well as code. And code may sound vague, and it definitely is, because there are a ton of languages that Langchain supports. Now, I'm personally going to be using Python, but I'm also going to show you how you can find the entire list of supported languages. And before we do code in a Google Colab notebook, which you guys can use whatever you want to write your specific Python code, I will say that this is one video in a large series that I am developing on large language models, OpenAI, as well as Langchain. Now, you don't need to have too much prior experience to understand the concepts that are going on in this video, but this builds on some of the fundamentals that I've covered in earlier videos. With that being said, let's start coding. So my Google Colab is set up. What we're gonna have to do at the very top is we're just gonna do a pip install. And I'm gonna put a Langchain in over here. And then I'm also going to pip install tick token. So when you're dealing with token calculations, you will need tick token. And Langchain, obviously, we're utilizing that. So just run both of these. They'll probably take about 30 seconds or so, and I'll see you guys back in a minute. All right, so we won't actually need to put in an OpenAI API key to go through this video. If you're going to send this information to a large language model, sure, but I will be doing that in another video. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off with the text splitter called character text splitter. So we're going to do from Langchain dot text underscore splitter. We're going to import in character text splitter like that. All right, just run that. We should be good over here. Perfect. Now we're gonna have to put in our text. So what I'm gonna do is just copy and paste this text I already did. I prepared this video a few days in advance, and it's gonna be talking about Zach Greinke. Now I grabbed this information from a Wikipedia article. Zach Greinke, if you don't know who he is, he's a baseball pitcher. Most famous probably for playing with the Dodgers as well as the Royals. He's played for a lot of different teams, but he has a quirky personality, kind of like the modern day Yogi Berra. Not to talk too much about baseball because this is a coding video, but it just talks about the Royals selected Zach Greinke in the first round, blah, blah, blah. If you want to read more about Zach Greinke, go check out anything. And if you want to read more about Zach Greinke, check Reddit, check Wikipedia, or social media. Great picture, by the way, and we'll make the baseball Hall of Fame. All right, regardless, I'm going to run this cell over here, and let's start coding out our character splitter. So I'm just going to say character underscore splitter equals character text splitter like this. And inside, the first thing we're going to do is our chunk size. Right. And our chunk size is going to be based off of the number of characters. So I'm just going to say that's equal to 150. Up next is going to be the chunk overlap. So chunk underscore overlap. And these two parameters you're going to see most common across all these different splitters. So the chunk overlap is what overlaps for each of these different chunks. So this over here will have multiple chunks. Let's say for our first example, right? We just go through after, like it goes through Gatorade, right? So if we say we have a chunk overlap of 1, each chunk will have like, let's say for an example, R overlapping in between them. If we say like it's like 2 or 3, it might have ORA. So that's what our chunk overlap takes a look at. I'll show you guys a better example of that as well. I'm just going to put 0 over here because I don't want to have any overlap. And then you can also set up a separator. So, and there's other parameters as well. But for these examples, I don't think we need them that much. I'm just going to say separator equals, and I'm just going to put single quotes with no space here at the end. I've seen also strip white space is separated regex. So as I know, there's a lot of different parameters you could throw in here. We're keeping this one pretty basic. Okay. So I ran that. Now let's build out a few new cells down below. The first thing that we can do is create a document just to show you what this looks like. So what we can do is have this character splitter here again. If you're lazy, you can just copy and paste, or if you want to actually learn the information better, you can just type it out. But we can say create underscore document, or documents, because it's not create document. And then inside over here, we're going to have a bracket, and then we're going to say our text, which is generally this text over here. And if we run this now, right, we can see page content over here, stops over here, right, and just continues to go through. And these are all of our different chunks. So a few other things that we could do specifically with that, we can see what our first chunk would essentially look like. So again, character splitter, we can do dot split text. We can just throw our text here, and we can grab that 0, which is going to be our first one. You should know that from Python. And it says the role is selected Zach ranking in the first round with the 6th pick of the 2002 MLB draft after he won the Gatorade National Player of the Year. And it stops. Because it's a character splitter, we're stopping in the middle of this sentence. And you'll see how we can develop this a little bit better in the future. Well, I should say the future a little bit later in this video. All right, let's actually set up our chunks now, and we can do a little bit more with this. So we're going to say chunks equals character, and then it's literally going to be the same thing over here, right? Except we don't want this 0, so we can do this a little bit better. All right, that's run over here. So if we want to see how many chunks we have, we can just do length over here, throw our chunks in here, right? Chunks, boom, and run the cell, right? We have 9 total chunks. And if you don't want to write all this garbage again, and you just want to do this super fast, chunks 0 like this, check it out. Chunk 0 is like that. Let's build a few more. If we want to see what chunk number 1 looks like, right, just make this chunk 1. If we want to see what chunk number 2 looks like, we can just go over here and do chunk 2. So feel free to play with this as you want. If you want to go super fancy, maybe try building out a for loop and showing all these different chunks, or you can just go back over here and essentially see what's going on too. But up to you, right? It's how you want to learn. And then you can just do over here length. And if you want to put chunks and put 0 in here, right? Let's say we want to see the length of what chunk 0 is, 149. Let's see number 1, right? 150. Number 2, 150. So it's not going to be an exact science, right? It's not 150 every single time. First one was 149, but it's going to be pretty close. Okay. Let me show you a better way that we could do that. And this is going to be called recursive. Now, it's not going to be as accurate specifically with the chunk sizes, right? You're going to have sometimes it's going to be a little bit less, sometimes it's going to be a little bit over, but recursive is generally regarded as a better method to run chunking rather than just using a character splitter. So let me show you real quick the order of how we take a look at the chunking with the side of things. So first we take a look at paragraphs, then we take a look at sentences, words, and then also the characters. So this is kind of like the preference on how this would be chunked rather than the one above, which we were just taking a look at characters, right? This is recursive. So if we have the opportunity at paragraph first, right, we're going to do that, then sentence wise, then words or characters. So that's also why it's not always going to be 150 if we're going to chunk at 150. So let's build out our recursive character text splitter. I'm just going to say recursive character splitter. And we're going to say that's equal to recursive character text splitter like this. Okay. Then inside over here, we're going to do the same thing as we did above, right? We're going to do chunk size. We're going to say that's equal to 150. This time we're going to put a chunk overlap. We're going to say that's equal to 0. And then we're going to set up a length function this time. And we're going to do length underscore function equals len. And I don't know why this is error. Well, you know, I'm dumb and I forgot to actually import in our recursive character text splitter. So pretty easy, from Langchain text underscore splitter import recursive character text splitter. So make sure you bring that in. Sometimes it's a lot harder to code and talk and record at the same time than you think it would be, but it is. All right, so we have all this over here now. We're going to keep the text the same. We're on a Zach Greinke focused baseball video, at least for the first part, before we go into some of the coding side of things. And again, if we want to do the same thing as we did above, right? If we just want to go over here to our chunks, we can set that up. So chunks, and this time we're going to put our recursive over here, dot split text. We still have our text on there, and then we can just see over here length chunks. So let's see if we're going to use all the same this time. And this time we actually have 10 chunks. So last time we had 9, this time we had 10. Let's see what chunk 0 looks like. So last time it stopped with A, right? And this time the Royals selected Zach Greinke in the first round after he won the Gatorade National Player of the Year award. It's a full sentence. So a little bit different than that first one, right? If we want to see what our first, or I should say our second chunk, and it says, as a high school senior, after playing in the minor leagues, he made his MLB debut. He was derailed by his battles with. So chunking is going to be a little bit different this time, okay? And then if we want to go over here and see specifically what our length of these chunks are, we can just do that as well. So let's see what our first chunk length would be on this time around. We go over here, throw in 0. We're at 147. First time we started at 149, which makes sense. Let's go to chunk 1, 142. And you can see we're really far off from that 150 number. 2 is 141. So if you had to choose between the first one or the second one, make sure to use the recursive text splitter. All right. So now what I want to do is show you guys the token splitter. So technically you could apply tokens to either one of these. So you could go to this character splitter and split it by tokens, or if you wanted to go to this recursive character text splitter, you could also split it by tokens. From reading the Langchain documentation though, it highly recommended, if you're going to use one of them, use it with the recursive character text splitter. And just to show you the little bit of difference real quick between tokens as well as characters, because I didn't understand this at first when I started learning Langchain. So this OpenAI's large language model uses tokens. Now, from what I've read, it's usually about a 4-to-1 ratio. So let's take a look at one of these over here. One of our first results, right? So this was, let's actually go to the second one. Yeah, this was what? Exactly 150, or this was 149. I think it was chunk 1 that was exactly 150. But also had this over here. So I think it was this one right here. 150, you can see it's 36 tokens. It's split up like this. So if we go again with the chunk size of 150, if we're applying the token size of things, we're going to have a lot more text than if we went just with the characters, which is a good thing, right? I'm kind of glad that each token is for characters instead of each character being 4 tokens, because it'd be a lot more expensive to run LLMs with OpenAI's platform. With that being said, let me show you really quick how we can set this up. So we'll open up a few more over here. And the first thing that we're going to do is say token splitter equals, and we're going to put recursive character text splitter. And we're going to do from underscore tick token encoder like that. And then same thing, right? Chunk underscore size equals 150. Chunk overlap equals 0. All right, so we have that over here. It's going to take a second to run. Then we can say token splitter, and we're going to just do split text. We'll put our text here, and we'll just grab 0 this time just to show you how this is built out. Right, and we have all of this text again. And if we want to go super fancy and run all this stuff again, if we really wanted to, I was going to skip it over, but because you guys are watching this video, we'll do that. So we'll go over here and do chunks equal this once again. And the thing you might be wondering is, well, 2 things you might be wondering. Number 1, how many chunks is there? And the answer to that is 3. And the other thing you might be wondering is, what's the length of one of these chunks? Let's go in between. Let's do 1. And the length is going to be 393. We want to position 0. We're looking at 651. So from a basic level, this is kind of how text works. You can use a character text splitter or a recursive text splitter. And if you want to be fancy, you could also use tokens. And like just a few lines of code, and we're rolling with this. So now we're going to kind of pivot, and we're going to start taking a look at Markdown. Then we're going to go into HTML, and then we're going to look at the coding side of things. Let's go through Markdown. And before I forget this time, let's throw another thing. And also, when we're talking about tokens, random topic, but I always think of the band Sleep Token, which I want to see them alive eventually. But all right, we're going to say import in Markdown text splitter. This time, throw that in over here. And also, probably no one watching this video listens to the type of music I do, but that's all right. We'll do Markdown splitter equals Markdown text splitter chunk size equals 150, and then chunk overlap equals 0. Like that. Same thing again, over and over again. We're going to change this up. This Markdown text I actually just generated ChatGPT. So just went over here, new chat, right? And then boom, this is our HTML code. This is our Markdown. So you'll see how everything was essentially created. Sometimes so much faster just to generate there. So there is that. Then we can go over here, docs equal Markdown splitter, create document. So this is like very beginning. Remember I showed you how we can do the document creation. So create documents, throw down Markdown underscore text. Okay. We want to print out our docs. Essentially, that's how we print this out. And if you want to see what our first version of that looks like, we can just go over here, print docs, throw in a 0, and right, our Markdown over here is like that. So it showed our random text Markdown and our introduction. This will probably be number 2, or I should say 1 over here, but you can see page content and has that lorem ispum. I actually first learned about that through my web design days. Throw it back to high school. All right, now we're gonna take a look at HTML, and I should have transitioned that way better, but let's pretend we are, right? Welcome back to our high school days. We're gonna take a look at HTML code. Let's start off with that. So from Langchain.text splitter, import in HTML, and I think that was still pretty cringy, but that's all right. HTML header text splitter. That's in here now. And again, all auto-generated. Throw this HTML string over here. Lot of text, and thank you, yeah, for writing this out for me, because that saved me time prepping this video. Okay, so there is going to be something else on this one that we can set up, which is pretty cool. So I saw this in Langchain documentation, but it's headers to split on. I'm literally just copying this line by line off of the documentation for the headers to split on. So we can just do that. So if you want to say h1, modify this as you want. So header 1, and we can just do h2 and h3 as well. h2, h3, header 2, and header 3. All right, that's run over there. Then HTML splitter equals, and then what we're going to do is we're going to say I'm just going to copy this so I don't make any errors. But HTML header text splitter. Then we can say headers to split on equals, and guess what? We have headers to split on right over here. And you could expand this out. By the way, headers in HTML go from H1 all the way through H6. So boom, that's run over here. And then I'm going to say is HTML header splits equals HTML splitter, like that, dot split underscore text. Then you throw in your string, which I believe this is called just HTML string. Okay, that's in there now. And then lastly, if you want to see what these look like, throw this in over here, and this is what we got. Welcome to random HTML. This is randomly generated HTML snippet, and you can see how this has been built out too. Our H1s, welcome to random HTML. We have a paragraph over here. So only one H1 tag. I guess I could have generated more, but whatever. All right, so now we're on the code side of things. I'm going to say from Langchain.text splitter import language this time. Okay, and we're going to be using our recursive text splitter with this, but we need to import in that language. And to see all the different languages, this is what it talked about in the documentation. So you can just put it's honestly a basic for loop, but you can just put e.value for e in language. And to see all of these, this is our current list. CPP, Go, Java, JS, TS, PHP, Ruby. Like there's a good list over here. Obviously, with all these data videos, I focus on Python, so I'm going to use that. And then I hope they have SQL. Let's see. They have Markdown, which we technically already used that. We have HTML, which we technically use that, a little bit outside of there. Unless I'm blind, I don't see SQL, but that's all right. We're looking at better. One more time. And unless I'm blind, they don't have SQL in here over yet. All right, regardless, let's get going. All right, to see also how Langchain splits based off of a specific language, you can just go recursive character text splitter dot get separators. So separators from language, and then just throw in here language dot, and we're gonna put Python in here like that, right? And I actually have an error. I believe Python needs to be capital. And there we go. So preference in order. This just kind of goes back to where I showed you. Where is this at? Like from this recursive text splitter, right? Paragraph first, sentences, words, characters. And this is the preference on the Python side of things. I generated all this Python code. I guess I technically could have just grabbed code from another video, but whatever. We're going to use this Python code over here. And let's get going on this code. Very, very basic once again. So let's set that up. What we're going to do is our Python splitter equals recursive character text splitter from underscore language, like that. Open that up inside. We're going to say language equals language dot Python, all capitals on that side of things. Chunk size equals 150. And lastly, chunk overlap equals 0. All right, that is running over there. Then we're going to say Python underscore stocks equals Python splitter dot create documents. Throw in our Python code over here. Python code, which should be right here. Awesome. I'm just making sure it's spelled correctly because I apparently can't spell. All right, and then lastly, if we want to see what's going on, print our Python docs. We have that, or if we just get rid of this print statement, everything will show out other way. It kind of looks a little bit cleaner. So yeah, that's essentially it, right? So just to recap, these last three is a little bit different. Markdown over here, right? Again, chunk size, chunk overlap. If you need to grab anything from this video, just know what these two are and essentially the Langchain documentation. But Markdown text over here, we created the docs on here and set that up, right? Our HTML text splitter. Throw our HTML in here. This time we can actually specify what headers we want to split it on. Set up our HTML splitter with our header first, which the headers are split on. And then you do the splitter.split text underneath it. So HTML is a little bit more complicated. You have 2 lines of code, or technically 3 with this extra headers to split on. And lastly, code. You can see all the different languages that are associated with Langchain. You can run this on. You can see the different separators. If we run this line over here, import in our code, set up this fun stuff. Again, Python docs, create our document, and print out our document, or just call it specifically right there. And yeah, that's this video. So hope you guys were able to pick up these chunking concepts. All I ask in return is if you could subscribe to the channel. It's 100% for free, but it does show YouTube that you enjoyed this video and got some value from it. Now, on the side of Langchain and continue to develop this series, I upload 2 to 3 videos every single week, and I'm currently expanding out this playlist so you can check out future videos right over here. And I'll definitely be expanding upon this concept within some projects.